The next topic is reapportionment, a presentation of proposed options to take out for community input. So I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Angie.
And Sia Lindstrom's going to kick this conversation off. Sia?
Terrific. Thank you, Ms. Angie. I appreciate that. For the record, my name is Sia Lindstrom with the County Administrative Office. And presenting with me today on our Commissioner District Reapportionment Project is Dr. Ethan Sherigan. I hope he is in the audience, from Portland State University. Also Amanda Garcia Snell, our Community Engagement Manager. And Tom Carr is going to be filling in for me if I run into any connectivity issues today. I'm working remotely. So Tom is in the wings if I need him. Also in the wings, in case we need them, are Joe Nelson, our Director of Assessment Taxation, and Steve March, our Consultant and Redistricting Specialist. So we have the team here in case you need them for this conversation. And Brenda Bartlett, I think, is running slides for us. So Brenda, next slide. So the purpose of today's work session is to review the redistricting proposals developed by PSU and ask you to provide staff with direction about which proposals should be moved forward for community engagement. So we'll briefly review the project timeline. We'll look at the current district boundaries, and we'll review the factors that your board forwarded to PSU in March to use in development of these options. Then finally, I'll turn it over to Dr. Sherigan for the deep dive into PSU's methodology and the 5 proposals they've developed. The last step will be input from Amanda Garcia Snell on the community engagement that's coming next before we turn it over to you. Next slide, Brenda. So as a reminder, this is the timeline for our reapportionment process. We've completed the first 3 steps already. You appointed Joe Nelson as your county official in February and referred the factors to PSU in March. And PSU has now completed the proposal development process, which was June last month. So we're about to launch into the 5th step, which is to first release the proposals for community engagement and then bring the results of that engagement back to your board in September. As a reminder, this will affect the 2024 election. While we plan to be done by November or December, we must complete the process by January 6th, at the very latest, 2023, so that candidates can file on time. Next slide, Brenda. So this is an overview of our current district boundaries. And on the right-hand side of the screen are the cities and neighborhoods that our current districts include. The small table in the middle shows the current population based on the 2020 census data. As a reminder, our charter says that if a district is out of alignment by more than 5%, a reapportionment process is triggered. And the district boundaries must be realigned to bring back population balance to a difference of no more than 3%. So you can see that when Joe Nelson brought you the 2020 census analysis earlier this year, it showed that District 2 was the district that had grown in population more quickly than the other 3 districts and was out of population balance by almost 9%. Next slide, please, Brenda. So these are the factors that your board forwarded to PSU several months ago. So they'll look familiar to you. As a reminder, the factors on the left are state factors to be considered as near as practicable. The factors on the right, the first 3, are the additional factors your board elected to add to those state factors. The last 2 factors on the left came up through the first phase of our community engagement process, and your board asked that those factors be included and forwarded to PSU as well. Brenda, next slide. And with that, unless there are any questions about background, I will turn it over to Ethan, Dr. Sherigan from PSU. Ethan, are you with us?
Thank you, Sia. Yeah. So the kind of gave informal names to each one of the proposals that you'll see today to distinguish them from each other. The first proposal we'll talk about is one which is based on the current boundaries and changing kind of the minimum amount of square footage, if you will, kind of the minimum amount of footprint changes that would enable rebalancing of districts to within the standards set out in the charter. The second proposal is one which focuses urban areas into districts so that there are a district is as much as possible urban or rural. So in that one, you'll see that District 1 excludes all the current area that is outside of urban, and you'll see that also big changes in District 3 and 2 there that move eastward into urban concentrated areas. The third proposal is one is called Urban and Rural Balance. This was an attempt to show what would happen if we wanted to ensure that every district had some representation of rural parts of the county in the district. And the proposal 4 uses community boundaries, including the school districts, parks and recreation districts, and neighborhoods in order to try to avoid splitting areas of common interest. We developed also after our first round of one-on-one consultations, there was a call for an additional plan, which is kind of a variation that adopts elements of proposal 2 and 4. It's one in which we try to concentrate urban areas, but use UPAA boundaries really to focus on those versus other boundaries like school districts in order when we're talking about communities. All right, next slide. So in the report that you should have received, which accompanies the presentation, you'll see information specifically on the demographics of each of the districts under each of the proposals. That's a lot of information to digest, so it's not going to be presented on the slides here, but you can find that detailed information in reports. If we summarize kind of major differences from the baseline in each one of the proposals, it would be fair to say that proposals 2, 3, and 4 show a reduced concentration or reduced representation of Hispanic population of the county in District 1, and Proposal 3 shows an increased concentration in District 4. The other kind of significant issues are flagged here. I think that just to talk briefly about income, there was some interest in ensuring that there was representation of people at all levels of socioeconomic status in each one of the districts. I think the good news is that that is mostly accomplished in the baseline and in all of the current plans. Every district does have approximately equal proportions of most of the income quintiles. There is an exception that there is a slightly higher concentration of the very highest earning households in District 2. And some of the proposals you'll see today, particularly 2, 4, and 5, slightly reduce that concentration by changing the composition of District 2. Next slide. So let me orient you to what you'll see. This is how we'll present each one of the proposals. On the left, you see a map of the proposal. Each one of the districts is colored a different color, and there's some hatch marks there. The hatching indicates an area that was previously part of a different district that is now part of that new district. So the colors represent the district, and the hashing over the colors means that, for example, in the northwest corner of District 2, there's an area that moves to District 4 that was previously part of District 2. So notable changes in this plan, again, this is the minimal change plan, the preservation, it's called proposal, are that District 2, so District 1, which is the south part of Beaverton, adds the tile flat area that's in the southwest corner of District 1. It includes the southern part of Cedar Hills, that's in the northeast corner of District 1. And the borders around the Aloha UPAA remain as they are right now. District 2 is the one that has a large population imbalance, and so population moves to District 4. And also to 3 and to 2. So each one of the other districts gains something from District 2. There's a change there to just normalize that boundary between 2 and 4 along Cornelius Pass Road. I won't spend more time on this unless there are questions, or we can move on to the next proposal. So this proposal is one which, again, concentrates districts to either try and be exclusively rural or urban. So it's almost kind of a thought experiment. I think the expectation is that there will be revisions to whichever one or multiple plans want to be advanced, but they kind of represent a pure form of the directions that we were given. And urban-rural definition here is based on Census Bureau's definition. So those are based on population density rather than actually on planning areas. So significant changes here. Districts 2 and 3 in particular really concentrate on the eastern part, the very high population density areas. District 1 is already mostly urban, but in order to move some of the urban area that was in District 1 into 3, so that 3 is exclusively urban, it has to move north and east up to Highway 26, all through the West Slope, Raleigh Hills, Montclair area. Okay, but the changes I think are pretty well explained in that map. So if there are no other questions, we can move to the next proposal. So this is one where we ask the question, what might it look like if we wanted each district to include a significant part of the county's rural population to balance the urban and rural areas in each district. You see that there's really significant changes here. I think that the core area of each district does remain the same. You know, District 4 is still centered around Hillsboro's population center, for example. District 1 still South Beaverton, but the outer areas of the districts change significantly. So District 2 for example, now extends all the way to the northwest corner of the county, everywhere kind of north of Highway 26. And District 3 probably changes the least in this scenario. There already exists a balance, which you can see from the relatively small amount of hatching in District 3. And District 1 now extends to the kind of out to the Gaston area in the southern and southwestern part of the county. All right, on to the next proposal then. So this proposal, there'll be a supplemental map, I think, on the next slide, which we can show the exact boundaries used to construct these divisions. But the concepts here are that we wanted to avoid splitting cities, school districts, parks and recreation districts, and so that's accomplished here with these changes. District 1 extends to the eastern part of the county. Other significant changes are there, but what it accomplishes is that District 3 now entirely encompasses the Tigard Tualatin Aquatic District, and Districts 1 and 2 split the Tualatin Hills Parks and Recreation District. Neighborhoods here are also shown. We did use neighborhoods and tried not to split neighborhoods when it was possible to avoid. But again, this this proposal didn't explicitly consider UPA boundaries. I think it was one thing that we didn't have on hand with our data, and so you know, the communities of interest didn't capture that aspect. So that was the motivation to develop the 5th proposal that you'll see on the next page. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, the next slide actually. Let's look at the next slide for a moment. So this is a busy slide, but I can kind of walk you through what you're seeing here. These are all the input layers which were used in the consideration of how to draw the districts for proposal 4. So on the right-hand side, I'll start with, you see kind of the teal shading for the Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District. The lighter part of the teal shading is the part where the city of Beaverton overlaps with that Parks and Recreation District. And likewise for the Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District is shown with shading with cities overlaid on top. So everything that's kind of a lighter shade, a lighter blue shade is a city incorporated area boundary. The red lines, which you may see on the map, represent school districts. So one of the reasons for such an irregular boundary around western edge boundary on District 3 here is because we wanted to avoid splitting the Gaston School District in this scenario. So we kind of rectify that western border of District 3. It still becomes necessary to split the Hillsborough School District, but we find a dividing line that balances population when we divide that school district between Districts 3 and 4, and so on. Districts 1 and 2 approximately share and divide the Beaverton School District. A little bit of area outside the school district they include there just to maintain a balanced population. All right, next slide. All right, so this is the new proposal, which we kind of changed the way we think about what represents communities of interest to represent the UPAA areas, the cities themselves, as well as the planning areas set aside for possible UGB expansions or future incorporation into the cities. The contents of are shown here, the contents of the neighborhoods as well as the city boundaries that are there. You know, we've, I think, reduced the number of splits, but only modestly. So part of our charge was to try and not divide a city into more than 2 districts. That is accomplished. We did reduce the number of splits of Beaverton, for example, into just Districts 1 and 2, whereas I think previously part of it was in District 3. But I think I wanted to highlight that it's still, we weren't able to avoid dividing Hillsborough. So Hillsborough is divided a different way here than in the previous plan. For example, the southern part of the city now is in District 3, whereas in the previous plans, more of the northern part of Hillsborough was in District 2. And that was kind of the case in the status quo. So what we offered here is a concept which puts more of the north and northeastern part, the Orenco area, into District 4, and in exchange for using the southern part of the city going to District 3 south of the Tualatin Valley Highway. And this will become a little clearer, so we can go look at the next slide to see where the UPAA areas actually overlap. And so we, in this plan, you know, some areas that we kind of naturally maybe think of as more having more affinity to, you know, maybe District 1 or 2 Beaverton area, for example, Metzger, is actually part of a different planning area for the city of Tigard. So we see here that boundary, that dividing line between Districts 1 and 3 is now really strictly drawn along that UPAA boundary. So I wanted to call that out because that was kind of something that I think a couple of folks didn't realize where that UPAA boundary is on the eastern part of the county. The other thing you see here is that Districts 1, 2, and 4 now follow more or less the western edge of the Beaverton UPAA. The exception here is kind of the Rock Creek area, Orenco area, and Aloha. So Aloha encompasses some of the lighter pink area that you see in the map on the right, kind of zoomed in. That's part of the Hillsborough planning area. And then it also includes the light green shaded area that's currently a part of District 1. So this plan keeps 80% of the population of Aloha in District 1, but 20% of the population does move to District 2. And we do that in order to avoid having District 2 coming further into Hillsborough. So even with that change, we still did have to put a little part of some kind of housing developments on the outskirts of the Orenco area into District 2, which are currently already part of District 2. We just kind of weren't able to retreat the boundary all the way. All right. So I think if there are questions on any proposals, I'm happy to answer them. If there's specific boundary questions about roads, or if there are any other kind of questions. Again, there's some supplemental demographic data on the race ethnicity distribution and the income distribution for each one of the districts under each one of the proposals. Happy to follow up, but if there aren't any questions, I guess we can continue to the community input. Thank you.
We, Chair Harrington, if this works for you, we go ahead and have Amanda finish off with the community engagement section, and then we can turn it over to you all for questions I'm sure that you'll have for Ethan. So Amanda, go ahead.
Great, thank you. So as you may recall, we're conducting community engagement in 3 phases. The first phase is complete, and as was mentioned, it provided two boundary factors, factor considerations, the socio-economic status and urban-rural boundaries. And then we are now moving into phase 2 and 3. In the first phase of community engagement, in addition to the factor considerations, we also heard from community-based organizations and partners additional recommendations for effective engagement with culturally specific groups and suggestions related to communications. And so we're referencing those recommendations as we work through the community engagement plan with espousal. So in phase 2, which we are deep into the planning and doing in collaboration with community-based organizations and partners, we are really looking to hold in-person, culturally specific events. Hopefully we can still do in person. And then these would be, as I mentioned, we're working in collaboration with community-based organizations. And so we'll be co-creating those, the planning of that and co-hosting those events with our partners. Then in phase 3, we'll be doing more general community engagement. And so this will be an in-person opportunity, potentially an online open house. And then we will also be doing an online survey to share whatever the proposed boundaries that you all would like us to take out to the community. We'll be sharing those with the communities to get their input. Most recently, and this is sort of hot off the press, depending on the outcome of this meeting, we may be able to take some proposed boundaries to the fair on next Saturday and have those available for people who are visiting the fair to let us know what their preferences or share comments related to them. And that is all for community engagement.
Okay, and then the next slide, thank you, Brenda, is just a quick summary again of our timeline. So with direction from you today, we will release proposals for community engagement, as Amanda mentioned, even as early as next Saturday, and be back to your board in September with the results of that engagement process. So we now turn it over to you for discussion. So the key question that's highlighted on this slide is, which proposals would you like to move forward for phases 2 and 3 of community engagement? And whenever you're ready for it, there we go. The next slide has the 5 proposals side by side in case that's useful for you. And with that, I turn it over to you. Thank you all.
Commissioner Treese, why don't you kick us off?
Well, thank you, Chair. And I may have missed my opportunity to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it. I'm going to ask it now. And it has to do with the maps. This issue came up at the CPO 7 meeting that I attended on Monday night, just last night. And it's about a parcel that's about 150 acres located east of 185th and west of North Bethany. And it's kind of part of the North Bethany area. It's and I don't know if there's one parcel that moves that piece out of District 2 and away from Bethany. Can you help me with that, Ethan?
Yeah, so there's 2 things we can do. One, I can share with you a link, or someone can maybe in the chat. I guess we don't have that chat enabled. There is a link where you can actually, there's an online proposal viewer, and you can enter in an address. I don't think it works with a tax lot number, but if you have a street address or a series of street addresses, and then you can see how those overlay with each one of the proposals. I do have that browser open, and so there's some way I can kind of find exactly kind of a street segment, or I think with just a parcel, I have to go back probably and find out exactly where that parcel is and what addresses might be contained there. So I couldn't answer that directly right now.
Okay.
But it's certainly a question which we can answer, very expediently, given either an address or a series of addresses in that web tool.
And the reason I'm bringing this forward is that the CPO 7 feels strongly that this piece is part of the North Bethany area and should stay there. Mm-hmm. It also involves the extension of Shackelford, or the potential extension of Shackelford Road. So I just want to get that out there and share that I've already heard from our community that separating that out of the contiguous District 2 is not their preference.
Okay.
So could you clarify, Ethan, will that, I missed the availability of that tool as part of the material for today's packet. Will the public have access to that tool, or is that something that you subject matter experts have access to?
I think the vision is that it would be available. The URL is mentioned at the end of the report, so easy to miss. And I think once the decision is made on kind of what plans should be forwarded for discussion, then plans may, disappear. Right now, all of them are shown. And then, before that URL is kind of publicized, we can take options out. And then I think, Commissioner Treese, the comment that you have is exactly the kind of thing that we want to collect during the kind of feedback phase. I'm just kind of mentally thinking, I don't have to grasp the geography perfectly well, but what I'm thinking about where Shackelford Road is pretty deep into, close to the boundary between Multnomah and Washington counties. And so if that's the case, if I'm thinking of the right area, then actually that kind of area right along that boundary, that remains in District 2 under all the different proposals.
There is concern that one of them didn't include it. So I'm just registering that. We can move forward here, but thank you.
Other commissioners, I really anticipated there would be a bunch of questions, clarifying questions on where's this road and which line is this road and so forth.
Chair, I've had a chance, and I think others, to ask those questions in our briefings. So I know I got a lot of information then. So thank you.
Great, good. Commissioner Willie.
Oh, great.
No, go ahead, Roy, if you want to jump in there.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, thank you. I kind of tend to, I really don't care a bunch, but I kind of tend to gravitate to Proposal 5. I think that if you went back 25 or more years or 30 years, you'd see that looks about like District 3 and 4 looked like back in those days. I like the idea that District 1 extends to the east. It should. I mean, those folks are going to be in Beaverton someday. I like the idea that things are trying to have a UPAA lens and view. I know I think it was Jerry and you and I met at the same time, or maybe it was Lisa and I can't remember, whoever, when we briefed, but that was my issue. I just thought that we might be thoughtful about this and look at where things were directing as far as growth. So that's my thoughts. I don't have any big issues. I mean, whatever we pick, but 5 seems to be more forward-looking to me. So that's my comments.
Am I up? Did I lose everybody?
No, yes, you're up.
Okay, it was really, really quiet, and I thought, I think I might be frozen. Well, I guess from my standpoint, just looking at all of these, I didn't look at specifically where the lines were. I have a tendency to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I don't think there's anything currently in our districting that really violates the proposals that we were asking them to evaluate. So I tend to lean towards Proposal 1 just because it has the most minimal amount of adjustments. And I guess I think when I think about most of the constituents that I talk to, unless they're really rural, they have no idea what district they are. As a matter of fact, a lot of times when I make presentations, I talk about that the county is divided into 4 districts. And then we have an overall chair for all of the county. And then I begin to explain what my geographic boundaries are generally. And it's kind of enlightening to them and all of that, but I don't think anybody has this burning concern that they are in District 2 or District 4 or whatever, and they really want to be in a different district. And I think the more boundaries that we change, I guess the more confusion that would be. And so I'm advocating that we stick with proposal number 1. And yeah, like I said, minimal change.
I'll go next, Chair Hunton, if that's okay. I see you're muted. Yeah, I too had a briefing. I forget if it was with Roy. I agree with you, Roy. So a while back, thank you, Sia and Tom. I think we asked all the questions, however appropriate or inappropriate for a public hearing or a public forum. So thank you for that opportunity to the staff to ask those questions. And I am, I think the question is, let me scroll to the actual slide. Sia, to your question about which proposals would you like, I myself is in alignment with Commissioner Willie around proposal 1 being my favorite. But in terms of community engagement, I think I'm in favor of putting all 5 proposals in front of the community, just for the opportunity to learn about Washington County, to learn about the demographics that are in these districts, and also share the concerns and the impacts that Ethan did a wonderful job of laying out, like district, proposal 2. I have, concerns about the concentrations of our demographic community being potentially reduced and whatnot. So I think while I have my own favorite and agree if it's not broken, why fix it? I am in favor in terms of providing an answer to you, Sia, to say, I would like to send all 5 proposals to the community and see what the community engagement and go on that journey of learning with the community as well. I would love to hear what they say about each proposals.
Commissioner Treese, you started us off with a clarifying question. Did you want to come back to the key question?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and I did get in the process here. I did get the answer that it is proposal 2 that is the problematic proposal for CPO 7. So just that, I'd like to register that, and I am in agreement with Commissioner Welly. I think everybody I've heard so far about proposal 1. I also do like proposal 5. I think that it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we provide as much information to our constituents as possible. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we're culling this so that we're not presenting impossible decisions as well. So, I'm kind of thinking that maybe we'd be better off to go with a smaller number of options, but at the same time, I respect what Commissioner Fies is saying. So I'm kind of at odds here with myself. But I did want to call out that proposal 2 has already created some controversy, if you will. So thank you for coming back to me, Chair.
You're welcome. So I am interested in seeing all 5 go out. Can't hurt. I do agree with Commissioner Treese's observation on policy 2. Mostly, I want to make sure that it's clear we're looking for input and folks can have, for example, pro-con feedback on each of the proposals, right? And that's that's good info to have. I'm not worried about there being 5 proposals per se. I think people will decide which ones they want to weigh in on. Some may want all 5. Some may just look at the summary pictures and say, yes, no, I don't want to spend their valuable time commenting on it. I do have a clarifying question or a question for clarification, and that is the time for community engagement. Can you remind me of what the minimal amount of time, at least the online survey, will be available for folks to provide feedback?
Sure. So the online, we're in conversations right now with Patinkin, who will be handling the online survey. And so that may be live as shortly after we have proposals to share with community. And then that will be live the entire time that we're conducting community engagement, which will be through the end of August.
So minimally, it will be 4 weeks, maximally around 6. So my question is, minimally, how many weeks will it be available?
So it depends on if you are all in agreement that with what proposal should go out to the community today, then we can give that to Patinkin, and as soon as I think they're almost ready to go. So so I think that we could have something fairly quickly, like within a week, but I don't know, because we don't know what the proposals will be that we'll be taking to the community. But as soon as we have that, we're ready to go with community engagement with the plan, and then it'll be up to the vendor, the Patinkin, on how quickly they can get that turned around.
Sorry, I just tipped my Kleenex box over. So Ms. Angie, I would say, I won't, as one commissioner, I think we need to have a 4-week comment process. Okay, it's summertime. We need to use all of our tools to let folks know that we're seeking their input on options. So that was my question. What is the minimal amount of time that we're trying to ensure makes happen? So sure, I have some thoughts, but they're irrelevant for today's conversation. I would like to compliment the team. The visualizations really do help. And I found what you put together for distinguishing proposals 4 and 5 useful, because there's a nuance there. And I didn't expect to be so intrigued by option 5 or proposal 5, as Commissioner Rogers suggested. But I do think it balances what many of the mayors have already given feedback for on the state legislative boundaries, right? Don't split us. And what I've heard feedback from commissioners who are balancing multiple cities as well as multiple urban unincorporated areas. And Commissioners Treese, Fye, and Rogers hear about that the most in their districts. So thank you very much. I'm very comfortable with each of these options as you have proposed, and hope that we can move forward with all of them. And if there were any to be dropped, then I would suggest option 2 or proposal 2, in case commissioners wanted to reduce the set from 5 down to 4. Commissioner Willie, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And I would, that's kind of where I was going. I was going to say, if we know that proposal 2 already is problematic, that I would suggest, and we don't include proposal 2 in the community engagement. And if we could also, if we're going to, when we go out to the community, then could we add what it looks like currently, so that they have a comparison of, okay, this is where I am, or this is what the entire county looks like, and have a comparative to where we're going and where we are currently. So that's what I would recommend we add in there. And if we do take out proposal 2, please don't renumber them because then we won't have any point of reference to previous conversations we've had. So I don't know how you do that, but yeah, please don't renumber them.
Chair Harrington, I think I am hearing from a number of you about releasing potentially all 5 of them and potentially dropping proposal 2. Commissioner Willie, I appreciate your feedback about not renumbering for a minimum of 4 weeks through the survey work for community engagement. Chair, I'd just ask your assistance in figuring out whether there's consensus on dropping number 2 or going forward with all 5.
Okay. Commissioners, going to propose that how many are comfortable in dropping proposal number 2 so we only go out with 4? Okay. How many would want the full set of 5? Okay. Commissioner Fye, if you might, could you help me enlighten? Could you help enlighten at least me in terms of what does option 2 provide for you? And it could just be as simply as why not, right? But if there's anything that perhaps there may be something that I'm not appreciating detail-wise about option 2, so I thought I'd ask you.
I think my comment back to that is just to hear the feedback, and I think knowing that they can redraw the lines other ways, that simply there might be some good information to gain from that feedback.
Mm-hmm.
For both for District 2 and District 1, because the population reduction, especially for our District 1's Hispanic community, is also problematic, but there might be good information to gain from the community.
Yeah. I agree with you. I'm not bothered by the scope of having 5. But I'm also not adverse to having just 4. Are there any other benefits other than possible volume of input to have to digest that staff could enlighten us on?
I would turn to Ethan and Amanda if there is anything in proposal 2 that you think would be useful in particular to highlight. Ethan, you may be the best one to answer that for us.
Sure. I think the way to think about each one of the proposals is there can be elements of it that really stand out to people. So they people may not like proposal 2, and we may not maintain elements of it. This one might say, oh, that boundary I like. Can we keep that? But keep other elements of other plans. So I think that would be the only thing that wasn't mentioned. No opinion one way or the other, but each one of the boundaries was try to draw them in a unique way so that elements might be kept.
So Commissioner Treese, I hear you 100% that you've already gotten initial feedback. We need to make sure that's part of the formal feedback from the community. Is from your perspective, does it burden you or in any way burden community members just to have 5 options and to have number 2 there, and simply for them to say, no, don't want it, don't like it.
Well, actually, that's exactly what I was thinking, that by keeping it in, it gives us one to throw out. So there is that. And I think that what's most important is that this piece of information that I bring to the table from CPO7 gets embedded, as you mentioned, into the community feedback piece. But I don't have any particular heartburn in keeping it there. I just want to make sure that we're registering what the difficulty is by moving that one parcel out of District 2, because it is a community issue there. So I'm not, while I appreciate the support to remove it, I don't think it's a problem if it stays, with the understanding that it's not the best option for me at this particular point.
Yeah. So I think essentially there are at least 3 of us that are totally comfortable in sticking with the 5. We do have a clarification or potentially a comment from one of our presenters. Go ahead, Ethan.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, just not to complicate things, but one other option I could throw out there is that we could edit proposal 2 before it goes out. So if it's something we wanted to keep, but we know right off the bat, we can anticipate some feedback we get, we could make those adjustments and then put out a proposal 2 version 2.
Well, that's interesting. So I just want to make sure I understand. So what you're saying is you could look at that one parcel and move it back into District 2. That I'm referring to. Is that correct? I don't know what it does population wise, but I suspect there's not a huge population base there.
That's right. That's what I'm proposing. So if that's something that's an attractive option, we would be able to find a way to rebalance the other districts with hopefully minimal changes to the way they're formulated in the plan too.
To my fellow commissioners, I would support that, because then we've got the option of looking at 5 options that we know people can respond to without a negative just start out of the gates.
Commissioners, thumbs up on that idea? Minor modification to proposal 2. Sorry, Commissioner Rogers, I didn't catch you.
Yeah, that's not significant to me. If somebody wants to do that, that's fine, and we'll have 5.
Okay, great. Let's do it.
And Chair Harrington and Board, so just to confirm, we will release all 5 for community engagement as soon as Ethan is able to give us a modified 2A with that minor change. We'll go ahead and release all 5. And we won't necessarily bring that proposal 2A back to you all in work session before we release. And just want to confirm that's okay. Great. Good. We will get that done and out to you.
And see if I could just add, with a minimum of a 4-week engagement window.
Yes. Minimum 4 weeks. And I see Amanda nodding her head at that to confirm that we can make that happen. We'll work with Ethan to get that turned around pretty quickly. I see him nodding his head as well. So I think with that, we have what we need. Chair Harrington, Board and Commissioners, thank you very much.
I have a quick question.
Of course.
Sorry. So you're going to release 5 maps. I think even it's not your fault, but I think I had to get lost the last. I'm okay with the changes, just so you were clear, but I did get lost the last part. So bear with me. So you're releasing 5 maps, but really you're releasing 6 maps. Is that correct? Because it will be option 2, proposal 2, and then my changes to the proposal 2, or are we just releasing that change?
Right. So we would be replacing proposal 2 with proposal 2A. Thank you for that clarifying question. I appreciate it. Yes, unless you all tell us otherwise, we would replace proposal 2 with proposal 2A and still just release 5.
Okay. So I've had my briefings. The questions were centered with these maps. So does the demographics, any of that nuances change? Even
we will we'll have to update
calibrate
the report as well.
Okay.
So you're right. So in addition to the boundary changes, we can rerun the numbers and provide that too.
Okay.
New version of the report.
Thank you. Yeah, that was my question, and I'm okay with it. Yeah, with the 5 maps.
Great. Thank you for asking that clarifying question. Okay. Thank you all very much.